Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, hello, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is. G'day and welcome to Pixel Chatter number 18. Wow, we are really starting to climb up through the numbers. Hard to believe that we have been doing Pixel Chatter now for so long that we are up to episode 18. I want to say welcome back to those of you that are regular Pixel Chatter viewers, and welcome to those of you that are new Pixel Chatter viewers. This is the show where we talk about all things photography. I critique a few images online, live, and answer any questions you might have. It's just a bit of fun, and the longer format doesn't suit everybody, but you either love it or you don't. So welcome if you enjoy the longer format show. If you can hear me okay and everything's looking good, let me know. Jump into the chat box. Let me know where you are. What's the weather doing where you are? I'm in Sydney this morning and looking out the window. Things are a little bit grey and windy, so I think we're going to have a bit of a non-photographic weekend this weekend. A good weekend to be down in my little woodworking workshop. I might make something this weekend. Hey, g'day. So let me have a look. Photographia Australia. G'day. Dave's Tattoo, good morning. Good morning, Gianni. Good morning, Ren. Barracuda, morning. Yeah, the wind blew the sun away. It sure did, didn't it, Greg? I tell you what, I don't think it's going to be a great weekend at all for the weather. But there you go. That's how it goes. Now, you'll notice as I sip out of my new cup, check this out. What do you think of that? A very, very... In fact, that's where I'll jump straight into that. I'm very grateful. A fan of the show, let me show you, has sent me this. How cool is that? Wow, look at that. Scott March is who I need to thank for this wonderful mug. And Scott actually lives in the suburb next door to me. And he sent me a message and said, Ben, I've got something for you. Can I pop round? And had never met him before, never spoken to him before. Popped round and he gave me this. So there you go. So because Pixel Chatter always includes a cup of coffee, we now have a Pixel Chatter mug. Not sure how you get your own. I might have to ask Scott. I'm sure he'll be viewing, but I don't believe he's in the chat box. But he said he got it from Vistaprint and it was really fast. So, he's probably got the artwork and everything. Maybe if anybody else wants a Pixel Chatter cup or a mug so you can have coffee with me in the morning out of your own Pixel Chatter mug, we can work out how to do that. I don't know how to do that. How are we going? Slovakia in Central Europe from... Let me see if I can pronounce this right. By the way, when I look off camera over there, I'm looking at my iPad with the chat on it. Razit... Oh, my goodness me. Rastislav. I hope I got that right. Welcome. Drizzling on the Central Coast. Yeah, going to happen, Dave. Good time to get down to Summersby Falls, Dave. With this overcast sky, will give you the the filter you need. As long as the wind calms down a little bit, because the wind will move things around a bit much. G'day, Anthony. How you going? Alrighty, let's get stuck straight into things. Alrighty, I want to let you know that on the Tuesday night, 17th of October, this is for VIPs only. VIP Hangout, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So I'll say that again because I just mumbled my way through that. VIP Hangout for VIPs only on the 17th of October, which is this coming Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Now, if you want to know how to become a VIP, go to patreon.com/on3legs with the number 3. The link is in the description below this video somewhere. You can become a VIP, and that gives you access to these silly things like Hangouts and the VIP group and all those things. We have a great old time, by the way. It's a pretty active group of enthusiastic photographers. VIP stands for very important photographers. So if you want to get in on that, you can. But for the VIPs that are in the chat right now or are watching this live stream Tuesday night, join me for the Hangout, and we're going to process some images together. We're going to chat about stuff. And I'm using a brand new platform, so you can either find the link for that in the VIP group on Facebook or on the Patreon page. I've stuck the link up there as well. And it's we're using Zoom, so we've tested it, and Zoom works really well whilst I'm processing things, so the computer doesn't hang, etc. So we're going to be using Zoom. You'll see the link there, very easy. Alrighty, I'm just quickly checking the chat box. See who else we've got jumping in there. G'day, Tony. First time joining me on Pixel Chatter. Well, welcome, Tony. G'day. You'll see a very welcoming bunch of people in the chat box that will be happy to have you. Okay, so that's the hangout. A couple of other things just to quickly remind you about as well. Once again, they're down in the chat box. Is the People with Cameras event with that Fujifilm is running. Sunday the 29th of October in Sydney. By the way, I don't get paid anything to promote this. I just agreed. I love the way they run the event. It's very non-commercial. Even though it's run by Fujifilm, you can bring whatever camera you want. So I'm just involved because the marketing manager from Fuji is a friend of mine. So Lee Diprose is his name, and he runs it, and he contacts me every time and says, hey, do you want to be involved? So 29th of October in Sydney. All the event details are in the link in the description, or Melbourne on the 12th of November. I'll definitely be at the Sydney one. Haven't decided whether or not I'm going to go to Melbourne, but would love to see you there if you want. Still also have tickets for the Tassie tour in May next year. So if you are thinking about coming on that Tassie tour, we still have a few spots left. The early bird pricing runs out at the end of October, so you've got a couple of weeks to get in if you want to save around about 8%, a couple $100. Definitely enough money to pay for your drinks for the 5 days. I don't know how much you're going to drink, probably not that much, but anyway, if you'd like to come along, there's still some tickets available for that. Now, I wanted to show you something. I don't know if you remember last week we did a critique on an image that Chance Sealer sent in of a place called Cathedral Rock in Sedona, Arizona. He's actually gone back there, I think, this weekend to try and reshoot it, and I thought I'd show you this amazing place. I don't know how many of you are near Arizona, but this is, let me see if I can bring the bigger photos up on the screen so you can see. Here we go. Now, we saw it from the other side, and what Chance was saying was that a couple of hours walk, you can get to this side and, get the reflections of the rocks and everything. So he's gone back to try and shoot that, I believe, and I think that's why we're not seeing him in the chat box this morning. But pretty, isn't nature just wonderful? What an amazing place. I look at this and just go, wow, what a cool place. Sort of like the Blue Mountains and the Three Sisters, we've just got some amazing things, So what I thought I'd do is, if you've got something amazing and a location that's amazing nearby, feel free to email me at bennetton3legs.com so I can share it with all the viewers, because it's always good to have locations that people can go and check out for themselves. So if you know of a location, feel free to share it. Alrighty. Hey, g'day Brian. Brian's in. Christian, good evening. Kristen G. Berg. We've got Anthony. Or he said g'day to Anthony. He's saying good morning to Brian. Yeah, good to see you all in the chat box. Alrighty. Once again, if you're wondering where my mug came from, thank you, Scott March. Love it. Love the mug. Love it. As you know, we love to have coffee during Pixel Chatter. Alrighty, let's get stuck straight into the Lightroom tip. I've got a really cool Lightroom tip for you today, because I bang on a lot about composition and how important composition is in photography. I know I bang on about it a fair bit, but let me just bring an image up. I should have preloaded something, shouldn't I? Crikey. Where's the professionalism in this show? Alright. So I'm just bringing an image up that I can use as an example. There we go. Let's do this one. So this is just a raw file out of my Fuji camera. Yeah, that one will work. We're not going to do any processing. I'm just going to show you a tip. I'm trying to find one that works well. Okay. So let me share my screen and I'll show you. Okay. So inside of Lightroom, and I'm assuming most of you use Lightroom. Is there anybody who doesn't use Lightroom? I'd be interested to know. Just let me know down in the comments. But Lightroom's obviously a very good product for photographers now, and it never used to do as much as it does these days. And it's at the point now where you can use Lightroom for pretty much everything without having to worry about using Photoshop. And because Photoshop's very overwhelming, I think. But Photoshop was never ever made just as a photo editing software. So as where Lightroom really does a good job. You used to have another product called Adobe Bridge, which no one needs to use anymore because of Lightroom. It's really cool. Anyway, I'll share a tip with you. So once we jump into the develop this is a cropping tip, and at the same time as sharing the tip with you, we'll also, learn some shortcuts. Well, this is a shortcut, but I like using this. So if you once you're in the develop module, in fact, I think you can do it from the library and it will automatically put you in the develop module. Let's try that actually. I'm pretty sure if you're in the library, you can do this. Let's go back to the library. All right. So if you press the R key, let's see, does it actually? Yep. So the R key put me straight into the develop module in the crop mode, and you'll see what it's done is it's overlaid a grid, and it's not easy to see. But you can see there is a grid here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's sort of, it's the rule of thirds. So there's an intersection on the shed on the right, there's an intersection on the mountain here, just above where the boats are hanging, and then 2 intersections down here. Now, I always like using the grids just to sort of help me when I'm cropping to make sure that I'm putting something of interest on the right spot. So by having the grid, you can see that I can put the crosshairs on the boat hanging there and the jetty shed. But sometimes I like to try different layouts, and there's a whole bunch of different grids in Lightroom. And once you've got this grid up, if you press the O key, so that's the O for orange, you'll see it changes. Now you can see that this gives you a different grid. It's sort of like now a diagonal. You hit it again, you get another one. Hit it again, you get another one. Looks like the rule of thirds, but it's slightly different sizes. You hit it again, and you get this. I can't remember the name of this spirally one. Now, what's interesting is, in this, I hit it again, and you get all the different sizes. So you can see 4x5, 5x7, 2x3, and then you hit the O again, and it goes to the graph paper grid, and then back to the rule of thirds. So when you start cropping your images, you hit R and then you just hit O, and you can rotate or you can cycle through all the different options. What's interesting when you crop an image, so let's say I'll crop this image using the rule of thirds, and it doesn't matter which one you use. I'm going to crop it using the rule of thirds, so let's do that. And press R again. R is the shortcut to bring that up. Now you can see where I've cropped it to. If I now rotate through, you can sort of see how each grid then relates to your image, and have a look and see. And you'll be surprised how every time you do it, when you crop with one, well, I find this anyway, when I crop with one overlay, it doesn't matter which overlay I put over, they all fit in the way they're supposed to. And I typically just use the rule of thirds, but sometimes I like to have a look at some of the other ones and see which one fits best. So that's this week's Lightroom tip. Press R to crop and press O to cycle through the different grids to see what's going to work best for your image. So hopefully you found that helpful. I'm going to end up with, I don't know, I should do those videos, I think, as separate videos for the channel, because I've had a couple of emails now from people with some tips that they've given me to share, which is cool. So if you do have a Lightroom tip that you think is unusual that other people might not know, so not something that's obvious, but something that is typically like a shortcut that's really handy, send it through to me, and I'll use it on my weekly tips. Give you full credit, of course, but always keen to learn more. Let's have a look. Brian doesn't use Lightroom. There you go. So what do you use, Brian? I'm interested to know. What do you use if you don't use Lightroom? All right. Let's get stuck straight into things. Let's check the chat box. Hey, rule of thirds, 1 for you and 2 for me. Yes. Something like that, isn't it? All right. So people keep asking me to, I use Photoshop. Cool. People keep asking me if I'm going to upgrade to the D850. Now, I don't know if anybody in this chat box has the D850, but I'm not upgrading to the D850. So you heard it here first. And I've looked at it, I thought about it, and I had FOMO for a little while. But if I think about it, what I need my camera for, I'm not doing large prints. I'm not doing magazine fine artwork. I'm not doing anything that requires me to have high megapixels. And the D810's a fine camera. So what I'm actually suggesting people do is as the price drops on the D810, if you're using something older like a D300 or maybe a D700 or you might even have a D750 and you want something that's got a little bit more of a better user experience, then the D810 is going to be an amazing price. And it's a cracking camera. My son shoots with my D800. He's into motorsport or motor car or car automotive photography is probably the best way to put it. So he uses my D800 and gets cracking images. So, I think it's easy to get hung up on the upgrade thing. So, just thought I'd drop that in there because I'm getting asked a lot, am I upgrading to the D850? No, I'm not. For $5,000, I could do a bit of travel, go and shoot something interesting. I think that would be a better use of that money than upgrade. And I know you could sell the D810 and I'll probably get, I don't know what they're selling for, a couple of grand, but still it's a few $1,000 difference. So I'm not upgrading. All right. Let's jump straight into the chat box and just see what's going on. A bit quieter in the chat box this morning, gang. Maybe there's less people in there. Let me have a look. Oh no, we've got about 20-something people in there live. Typically, we do get a bit higher normally, so we've got a few people maybe away. I do know there's a few people not jumping in because they're travelling or doing something. That's okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's jump straight into some image critique. I've got 3 images now. Before I do jump into the image critique, if you do have an image you would like critiqued, I need you to send them in to me at ben@on3legs.com. You'll see the email address is in the description below this video. Ben@on3legs, that's with the word 3.com. Send me 3 images and try and include the EXIF information if you can, and make it about a minimum of 3,000 pixels on the longest edge. Okay, that way I get a decent resolution, and when we bring it up on the screen I can zoom in and I can check it out. So that's Ben@on3legs. Please send your images in. I don't have many to critique at the moment, so send as many as you can in, and that way you'll find yours will get onto next week's Pixel Chatter. Pretty much guaranteed if you send me some in. All right. So on that note, let's jump into Lightroom. Let's have a look at today's images. So today I have 3 images that I'm going to critique. And here we go. Let's bring that screen up for you. There we go. So I've got 3 images. The first one is by Steve's Ray of Sunshine Photography. So assuming his name's Steve, definitely. And it's a pier, I believe, in Townsville somewhere. So we're going to check that out. The second one is from Chance Sealer. Chance is a regular on the show. I don't think he's here today. But Chance, this is Bell Rock. And it'll be probably somewhere in Arizona. And then another one from Brian. And I know Brian's in the chat box. This is one of Brian's. It is another Jetty. So a lot of people with the Jetty addiction like I have myself, which is kind of cool. Nothing wrong with it. Somebody said to me, when are you going to go and shoot something besides Jetty? So I'm taking that challenge. I am taking that challenge. And I'm going to go and explore my Blue Mountains, local Blue Mountains a little bit more. Alrighty. Alright, here we go. Let's have a look in the chat box. I can see a few people coming up. Oh, Tony says, I dislike the D800. I found the D810 better. I love the D810. It's a bit not sensational, but the D850 is the best I've ever used, including the D4 and D5. Well, good stuff. Once again, it's a very personal thing, isn't it? David Snedden, hi from Scotland. G'day, David. A barracuda waiting for the coffee to kick in. Well, my coffee is well and truly kicking in. Yeah. In the Pixel Chatter cup. Hey, look at that. How good's that? The Pixel Chatter cup. Once again, thanks to Scott for giving me that cup. It's kind of cool. Big Oz still waking up. Too early for you, is it, Big Oz? Good to have you here. And Brian just got home from shooting another Jetty. Of course he did. All right, let's jump in and critique these images. Let's start with Steve's from Steve's Ray of Sunshine Photography. Let's jump into this one. Alrighty, I don't have any EXIF information on this one, but there's a few technical things with it that we need to be really careful of when shooting and post-processing. So without the technical information, I can still jump in and sort of give you a bit of feedback, and hopefully everyone can learn from it. Always remember that my opinions are just that, they're my opinions, and from my experience of shooting. But it's interesting that you know, sometimes when you, and I know this is the same for me, when you're, especially when it comes to post-processing, when you're processing an image, sometimes it's easy to miss things. And I'm going to show you what I mean in this example here. Now, from a composition point of view, I like this image. I think it draws the eye right in. It's interesting. There's some great detail on the pylons for this jetty, and I believe this is a Cardwell jetty. And I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I think he's from the Townsville area, so I think it's from far north Queensland. So someone might know where Cardwell jetty is. I don't know exactly. And as I said, Steve hasn't sent me any of the EXIF information. Now, I can tell you for sure that it's a longer exposure, and we can see that just by looking at the clouds and the water. So it tells us pretty quickly that that's what's going on. I don't know what the shutter speed is, but definitely longer. And I can't tell you what the aperture is, but I would have to assume that it would be relatively high, because if you zoom in, he's really got the nail of the focus all the way through. So it's got good focus all the way through. So I think definitely got a decent aperture going on. But we'll have a look at the post-processing. We'll just get stuck into that, I think. From a composition point of view, I really like it. There's not a lot you could do. If you want the symmetry of the jetty, then you're just going to have to shoot down the guts of the jetty like this. You could change the height a little bit if you wanted to. Not sure of the jetty or the situation, but I really like it. And I think shooting at low tide with these, I don't know what would you call this build up on the pylons of whatever it is. Amazing how they just keep building up upon themselves, don't they? Whatever these, they're not oysters. I don't know, what are they? Are they oysters? No, they're not oysters. They're something else. Yeah. So, Brian said far north Queensland. Yes, love the shot. Looks selenium toned. Barnacles. There you go. Barnacles. Yes. I wonder what they were. So, the composition wise, I think it's good. I think it works really well. He's cropped it relatively square. Could have been a wider crop. Could be a square crop. I actually think a square crop would work a bit better. Just to tighten it in a bit, but it's good. Everything's good. I'm being, definitely be being picky. But let's just crop it in a bit, just so you can see the difference of a square crop over the one that he's picked. Let's do that, something like that. Let's just go to give me a square. That'll make it easier, won't it, if I just tell it what I want. Nah, square's not going to work, so we'll go back to original. Yep. So it's not actually narrow enough to be square, so we'll get out of the cropping for a second. But that's something that you could do. Once again, when you shoot it, you need to be thinking about how you're going to crop it. Now, there's a few technical issues with this image that I think we really need to be careful of. Always check for dust on your sensors or dust in your pictures. The first thing I notice when I look at pictures like this, especially when you go grayscale, is you can see the dust pops up really easy. Now, the way that makes it easy to view and find the dust is zoom right in and then just move around. Now, I'll do it here, because this is the area where there's a couple of them. As you move, dust spots are really apparent. Okay, and I can see, I don't know if you can see them, but I can see two here. And they're just so simple to remove. There's no need to have them. And this is just the spot removal tool inside of Lightroom I'm just using. And you'll see straight away those dust spots gone. You can't even tell they were there. And just do this all the way around your image, move it around. I find when it's moving, it's easy to see them. So there's one there that I've just spotted. Same thing, spot removal tool. And this is like a 60-second job, gang. So always before you export an image and share it with the world, just go through and do one final check through. Make sure there's no spots. Look, there's a great big one here. I don't know if you can see that. It's a monster. It's a monster spot. Okay, so I'm just going to use square bracket to the right square bracket to make my selection bigger. Grab it. Not a fan of where that's grabbing that from. Let it do it and then I'll move it. Come on, Lightroom, you can do it. There we go. Let's move it in over here somewhere. So, there we go. That's good. Well, no, that was terrible. I need to make the selection bigger. Because the selection wasn't big enough, we still had the edge of the spot. So let's make it bigger. Just never easy. Come on, I want to make this bigger. I'm going to get rid of that one. And now we'll do it again. That'll do. Let's see. And Lightroom typically gets it pretty good. It's not doing a good job with this spot. It's actually a bit big. So we'll have to do some feathering and stuff. But you get the idea. Just go through, check out what's going on. And yeah, we need to bring this in here. Feather the edges out. Let's just feather it out a bit. There we go. That'll do. That's good enough. It's close enough. There we go. Not great, but it's still, you get the idea. So that's the first thing I always do is look around your image for those spots because, and I've made that one worse. That's all right. I would have to probably, for me, I'd have to go into Photoshop to fix that up in a way that I'd be happy. But you get the idea, right? Just look around your image, and if you see spots, then you need to just quickly remove them. The other thing that's distracting for me is you can see down here, and I don't know if it was just where maybe some rocks were poking out of the water, or if it's something that he's tried to clone out, not sure. So Steve, if you've tried to clone it out, then which I don't think so. I think it's just something that we're seeing because it's a long exposure. So once again, if it's detracting from your image, then try and do something about it if you can. You know, don't be afraid to try and do something about it. We're going to go back up to, and just because it just, when you get rid of these little things, there's another one here. I don't know if you can see this one here. Same thing. It's definitely just like the top of a little rocks poking out. So this, you can do the same thing, and then you know, as you remove those things, you start to find that your image will just be that little bit better. And some people don't like removing things. You know, I get in a bit of strife sometimes from people that think that doing this is actually, you know, not good. But to me, I think if you're going to go to the trouble of making an image, then go to the trouble of making it the way you want it, or the way that it needs, you know, making it as good as possible. You know, there we go. That looks good. And you know, remove the distractions that are not helping your image from a focal point of view. Let's have a look at that. There we go. You know, even sometimes see these small islands on the horizon, especially that one there. I would just remove it, and because if it is, unless I'm, you know, taking an image for Google Maps, it doesn't have to be exactly the same as what it actually is. If it doesn't look like a mountain, it's just a blob on the horizon, get rid of it. All right. So let's go back to fit. So that's sort of my first tip. And I know I say it a lot, but you know, when you go through the image, just, you know, think about how can I make this more appealing. And also things that are artifacts like dust spots, you want to remove. Now the other thing that's happened here, and I'm going to show you, and it's very obvious, you've probably already seen it, is you'll see that all the way around, all the high contrast areas is a haloing. Okay, I'll zoom in a bit more. Let's go to 2:1. There we go. Okay, you'll see there's like this light haloing all the way around. Now, typically that happens for a few different reasons. One is you've got a lot of dynamic range and you've had to pull back the highlights and push the shadows. Secondly, you might have done a lot of sharpening or something like that. Now this image is, I'll come back to that, but this image shows signs of over sharpening. Once again, I don't have a huge file, but you can see that haloing happens the whole way through the image, and I can't really repair it. It's something that you have to avoid when you're processing, and it's on every single edge. Okay, so if I come up, let's zoom back in at 2:1. If we come up even to the top here, you can see these lines here. See these lines along the edges? Now, when you're processing your file, there's a couple of boxes down here on the right hand side for your lens correction. If you go into profile, that you can tick. And I always suggest people tick both of them. Okay, one of them is remove chromatic aberration. Now, if you're not sure what chromatic aberration is, it is this edge fringing. Okay, and so you'd probably find that this edge fringing here is actually a result of chromatic aberration. Now, typically it's green, or it could be magenta. Here he's desaturated the image, so we're not seeing that. We're seeing a white line or a light grey line. But chromatic aberration is something that's actually quite easy to remove. The other thing you can do with something like this, if you do get stuck with it and you can't get rid of it, is when you can desaturate the color. So you can select this particular, like find the color, and then once you've selected the color, then remove that color, or make it a selection. But you'd have to do it in Photoshop. You could select that entire line there in Photoshop, and you could drop the exposure of it slightly so it sort of blends in. But it's not an easy thing to fix. So the best thing to do is remove it when you're processing the image. Okay, so this one has, on every single edge, it's going on. Now, you just got to be really careful when you're processing your images. Just got to be really careful. I don't know what's with all these X's up here. Someone likes 4X or 3X. 4X, is it? Just about every pilot. Have a look at it. Someone's gone and drawn these X's, and I don't know how they've got up there. But it's a fair way up. There is lots of X's anyway. But you can see a lot of that going on throughout the entire image. And to me, that's something you've just got to be really careful of when you're processing. The other thing, if we zoom into 1:1, and at 1:1, have a look at the noise in this. See all the noise? So, you also need to learn how to do noise reduction. And if you're sharpening an image, let's say, and I'll show you exactly what happens when I sharpen this. I'll sharpen this image up. See how the noise gets worse? Now, if you're sharpening an image and you're doing it in Lightroom, you can actually apply a mask. So if I grab this, so the fourth option in my little sharpening box here is the masking option. If I hold down the Option or Alt key and then I slide that across, I can actually make a mask of what will and won't be sharpened. And I can start to, you can see because there's so much noise in this image, I'm not going to be able to do much with this. But if you are using a Lightroom, do that first. And in fact, I'll just quickly jump into another image to show you. Let me just jump back into the library. And I'll go to go back into this one here. Just fit. And I'll show you quickly what happens when we jump into the sharpening. So, it's not a bad thing to apply sharpening, but you don't want to sharpen everything, because as soon as you sharpen everything, you'll start to see that you'll get weird stuff going on. So if you just hold down the Alt key or the Option key and you just slide it to the right, and you can start to pick what's going to be sharpened. Okay, so if I don't want too much of that water sharpened, then I can just create a mask, and it's just it's finding areas of high contrast and sort of putting those into my mask and making sure they're the things that'll get sharpened. So, it works really, really well. So you can see now I'm only getting areas of really high contrast that are now in that mask. See how that does it? So, you just got to be really careful when you're, I'll go back into, and I have a feeling that this image here, you'll find a lot of that noise, and it's just, you can see this, it's crazy. There's a lot of it. So just be really careful. Okay, you can see it when you zoom in. That's really, really bad noise. And if I do the noise reduction, you'll see I can reduce it. But even look how much noise reduction I've got. I'm up to 81. And that's in Lightroom, which is not the greatest place. Let's zoom out. The problem with doing that is I'll lose all the detail and everything else. So just be really mindful when you're processing your images that you're from a technical. So this was a good one. Thanks, Steve, for sending it in, because you have a few technical issues in here. You've got the chromatic aberration, you've got the haloing, you've got the over sharpening with a lot of noise. And because I don't have the excess information, I can't see why. Make sure your ISO is as low as it can go. So, you know, for most cameras, the native ISO is 100, 200, or the D810 64. I don't know what the D850 is. Maybe Tony can tell us. But just, you know, make sure that when you're shooting, just have a little bit of a checklist, like a mental checklist. So when you get your camera out of the bag for the first time, or when you put it in the bag to go on a trip, just have a mental checklist for setting everything back to what is your standard setting. So for me, I go white balance auto, format card, I then go to ISO 64, aperture priority, and then you know, and I do evaluative metering, and that's it. I stick it in the bag, and that way I'm reset back to my starting point every time. So every time I put it in the bag, I just have this little mini checklist I run through. And the reason I do that is because I have gone out shooting before, got home and realised I've shot everything in the wrong white balance, or I've been shooting at an ISO of 1600, or, you know, because I was shooting something the night before, or, you know, so it's easy to do. We're all human, right? So have a little system for making sure that you adjust those before you start taking photos. So thank you very much, Steve, for sending that in. Great photo, by the way, but just reprocess it, and I think you'll find there's an opportunity for you to maybe make it a little bit better. So let's now jump into the next image. Where are my computers? I've got the coloured wheel up on my computer. And for anybody with a Mac, that just means that it's struggling a little bit. There we go. So we're going to jump into the next one. Yes, a barracuda. It seems to have halo around edges of pylons. Yes, it did, didn't it? It's your canvas, create what you want. Photographia Australis. Yes, I agree. Great tips. You're welcome, Anthony. All right, so we are going to jump into the next one, which is Chance Sierra, and it's called Bell Rock. I'm going to say once again, it's probably in Arizona, because he shoots a lot from there. They've got some really cool scenery there. Now, I can see by looking at this that it's a fair way into the morning. And if I look at the time, yeah, 9:25 a.m. So we've got the sun's definitely well and truly up, which is cool. He shot this with his Nikon D7000. He's got a 35mm 1.8 lens on. He's shot it at f8, 1/320th of a second, probably handheld. Yeah, all of that looks good. Okay, so from a shooting point of view, you probably could have gone to f11 or something. Because once again, and I know when I critiqued one of Chance's last week, if you're going to have foreground in your photo, it's a good idea to try and get it all in focus, because when we're standing there as a human being, our eyes are amazing at autofocusing. So when we stand there and we look at this picture, so if we're actually standing there, everything will be in focus. Now you can see here, I would say he's focused on the rock. And the foreground shrubs here are actually out of focus, so we're not getting focus throughout the entire picture. So my first tip would be, make sure that you are thinking about this, and once again, these are the little things that make a big difference to the quality of your overall images long term. And this is that it's none of it's complex. It's just about thinking it through before you hit the shutter button. So if you do have foreground very close to you, think about, okay, where do I need to focus? What aperture do I need to be at? How do I make sure that everything's in focus? The other thing is you can also check it. In the world of digital, you've got a screen, zoom in and check it. And if you didn't get it all in focus, try again. and just change the settings and then check it. And, by doing that, what's going to happen is you're going to start to really learn, how changing the settings just slightly will actually make a big difference to your image. Now, I can guarantee if you shot this at f11 or f13 with that particular lens, the 35mm 1.8, the chances are you'll have everything in focus. At f8, anything below about f8, you start to get that very shallow depth of field, especially with a lens like a prime lens. So be very aware that, here's the thing, I know with my lenses, I know where my sweet spots are in the lenses, and you'll start to learn that. And the way you learn that is just you take a photo and you preview it. Take a photo and you preview it. And this is the beautiful thing about digital, is you have this ability now to be able to take a photo and preview it. So do it. Why not do it? I'd say I encourage it. So from a technical aspect, that's pretty much the only thing that I can pick up. Beautiful blue sky, no clouds in it. I think this would be a better location to shoot at sunrise as the first light hits the rock, rather than waiting till 9:30. But you don't know what the circumstances are. He's probably hiking through this area, and you've got no choice sometimes. I think it's a nice location. I don't know that this is the best shot, and I haven't seen any other shots. To me, that it's a bit tight. Let's just put the rule of thirds over the top and have a look. To me, it's a bit tight, and I think you could have shot a little bit wider, so move back or used a wider lens. And I don't know if there's any chance to get a bit higher. Probably not, unless there's another rock like this one behind him, who knows, that you could sort of climb up on a bit. The other thing I would suggest is if you're wanting to really make something like the rock your foreground, when you've got a lot of blue sky and you've got a lot of foreground, sometimes it is just about cropping it a bit to give you the best results. So, even if you did like a bit of a pano, would probably work better for this image. So don't be afraid to try different things. Once again, you're playing with digital here. You can do whatever you like. So I'm going to just crop it like that. And I also feel like it's not level. I don't know if anybody else is feeling that, but I'm feeling like it's a bit off on the level. So I'm going to just drop that down a bit like that. It's only ever slightly, but I'm just feeling like it needed a bit of something. Have I gone the wrong way? What have I done there? Let me have a look. No, I went the right way. Okay, let's do that again. Maybe I didn't go far enough. Or too far. There we go. Let's do that. So to me, sometimes just a little bit of cropping can make a big difference. And, to me, that's a better image than what we had before, just with that. The other thing, because the rock is what we want to stand out, don't be afraid to do a bit of processing on the rock to make it really stand out. Let's just going to draw those highlights a little bit. Now the sky is going a bit funny. All right, we'll have to do local adjustments. So I think, to me, I would, when anything like this, especially when it's busy around it, like a lot of bush and stuff, and, I've cut out most of that out of focus bush now. Grab a brush, clarity slider all the way up, and go to town on whatever it is you want to stand out. So here's my brush, square brackets to get it to where the size you want, and then brush over it with your brush, and you just brush it in, being careful of the edges. If you clarity over the edges, you'll just enhance anything like chromatic aberration, which you're going to get on a high contrast image no matter what you do. You're going to get some sort of something going on unless you're really careful. There we go. So what that does is it just makes the rock really stand out. Whilst I'm here, now I can make some adjustments. I'm just going to watch this, I'll bring the highlights down on the rock. Highlights down. And I'm just going to adjust the contrast on the rock. Let the computer catch up. It's struggling a little bit this morning. And just bring that up slightly. Let's drop the blacks a little bit. There we go. Might even just bring the colour up in the rock a bit. Using the saturation, there we go. All right. So, now if I show you before and after. So that's before, and this is, oh, computer's having a little coronary. Oh, g'day Andrew Mars in the chat box. G'day Andrew, welcome. If you don't know, Andrew's a fellow Aussie photographer and vlogger, and we've done a collaboration before. And Andrew's just come back from over in Iceland. Got some amazing videos up in Iceland. Very, very jealous. But you can see what I've done there is just brought the detail out in the rock and just made it stand out a bit more. So, you know, once again, when you're taking these images, I'm drawn to this little bit over the left here. It looks a bit like a face. And you can see, when I zoom in, see that chromatic aberration? I don't know if you can see that. Once again, I have the JPEG, so typically on a JPEG, this doesn't work very well. But I will click it anyway. Let's go into here and just remove chromatic aberration. It did a little bit. So don't be afraid to do that. All right. Yep, you can see that, you know, just some minor adjustments and you end up with a really nice look. The other thing I would do on something like this is my little gradient trick. I call it gradient source. Let's just add it. Probably too much. Let's just go to 1. Actually, let's put a lot in and see what happens. And what that's doing is it's adding a darker gradient. I'll do one from the bottom as well. Yeah, I want that cropped down. Give me the gradient from the bottom. Hold down the shift key, keeps it long because it's straight. And there's just exposure, and this is something that I do a lot. You probably see it in my photos now, is I drop the exposure on the top and bottom of the image if I do a pano, and it just draws the eye into the center. So there we go, look at that. Probably a bit dark on the top one, so let's brighten the top one up just a tad. There we go. And it just draws the eye into the center of the image. So there you go. All right, so that one's for you, Chant. Good shot though, mate. Looks great. Great locale. I'm very jealous of this Arizona area. I think that I have to put that on my bucket list of places to go. I don't know why my computer today is struggling, but it is. Let's jump back into the library. Alrighty, so I've got one more image to do, and that is Brian's. And I've run out of coffee now. I need a bigger mug. Need a bigger mug. I am a big mug, aren't I? That's what the boss would say. Okay, let's jump back into the library, and I'll bring Brian's image up. And I think Brian's in the chat box. Steve says, yeah, a vignette would work well also. Yeah, well, it's sort of like a vignette, isn't it? When you bring the gradient in from the top and the bottom, it's more of a panoramic vignette rather than the corners. But yeah, you're right. A vignette would work too. And sometimes I will add a vignette as well as what I call my gradient source. So I don't know if you can see that on the when I'm in the develop. I'll jump in there quickly just with Brian's image. I call it gradient source, so you can see here. So when I process an image, I've got 7 presets that I use. And some of them you can use together, some you can't. But quite often I will just go through and pick something from here and all of these are just different presets. You can see they're all a bit different. And then, you know, you can add tweaks. Some of these are just like the contrasts. I've named them. I've been building them so I can share them with everybody. And then you can see I can add other things on top. But I'll undo all of that so we can... There we go. But I think that it's, you know, sometimes it's just a subtly adding a bit of a vignette can make a big difference. All right, let's jump into this one. Alrighty. So Nikki has said, I've had good success, good evening, Nikki. I've good success in double processing long exposures with luminosity masks in Photoshop. Alrighty, I just realised I don't think I was showing you my screen when I was going through my presets then. Here we go. Oh boy, oh boy. Not enough coffee. As I was saying, so I've got all these presets. In fact, I'll jump into one of my images quickly and I'll show you some of the presets that I've got for vignettes. Let me find an image. Here, we'll go over to WA. And really enjoyed my time over there. Let's go to WA. Let's pick an image that I've already processed to some degree. Let's pick this one. Bit of a pedo. So quite often what I'll do with these, I've got these presets. If I jump into the develop module quickly over here, I've got all these presets that allow me then to do different things. And this one here, I call it gradient source. And you'll see, just watch the top and the bottom of the frame. It'll just get darker and darker. Okay, so it's gradient source plus, and then plus. And then I've got a thing called the sky tamer. And depends on what's going in the sky as to whether or not I use that. Now, all of these gradients, you can only use one of them. And then I've got these vignettes that I've got. I've got one called center of attention that I've made, which goes like that. And then I've got one which is called cornered, which is like that, so it's a little less. And these are just presets of things that I like, and then I can go through and use. And I've got a heap of them, so you know I can go through and sort of. These are my most common sort of settings that I use. The big stopper. The big stopper. Yeah, if I use the big stopper, I find there's certain settings that work well for me. This one's called Morning Mayhem. The sun tamer. Well, there's no sun here, so it's not going to tame anything. Warm start. Not going to do anything here because kick in the guts. You'll see, and shadow boxer. Shadow boxer lifts the shadows. Kick in the guts gives it a contrast. Yeah, so just. You know, I always find that doing a little bit of work with presets helps good. And you can see you just get these different looks going on. So I'm going to release these presets, by the way, to all the people in the VIP group in the next 4 weeks. I'm just going to finish off adding them all in. And if you're in the VIP group, you'll get access to all my presets. And you'll be, you know, if you've got Lightroom, it'll just make your life a little bit easier. All right, let's jump back into Brian's image and wrap up with a. Does anybody else use presets? Interested to know if you use presets. So by the way, if you're not already, here's my social media handles that you can follow me on. Active on Instagram and Facebook mostly, of course on YouTube as well. So feel free to follow me there. If you're not on those channels, if you are on those channels, follow me there. That's great. Instagram on 3 legs, Facebook on 3 legs with the number 3. You'll find me there. Pretty straightforward. All right, let's jump straight into now having a look at Brian's image. This is Brian's image. So Brian's took, I think it's the same jetty that we processed the other day. Is it, Brian? You could be able to tell us. But let's have a quick look at the EXIF information. So ISO 100, 14mm, f11, 30 seconds. Shot this on his D750 with the 14 to 24mm lens. Great lens, great camera, good shot, really, love it, nice. Okay, feedback. So from a technical point of view, lowest ISOs you could go, that's good. Using 30 seconds is a great option here because you've been able to get a little bit of cloud blur and you know, the water's nice and flat, and you know, I think it's done well. The aperture of f11 is good. A little trick for you, by the way, if you want to, and not everyone wants to, but if you ever want to get this starburst effect on a light, then increase your aperture. That means go up in the numbers, which makes the hole smaller. So if you shoot it at like at f18, f16 or above, maybe even f20, f22, you'll find that these lights become even more of a star. And the reason for that is your lens it creates what's called diffraction inside your lens, because as the hole gets smaller, the light has to bend more to get to your sensor as it comes through the lens, and it creates this starburst effect. So if you want to know how to get that starburst or where it comes from, that's where it comes from. So on the other hand, if you want to remove it, then you drop your aperture and you open your aperture up, and that'll remove it. Now, sometimes you can never get rid of it. The 14-24 lens is a fantastic lens for handling things like that. And if you have a look at the front of the lens, it's got this big bulbous front end on it. And the reason for that is that reduces distortion, but also reduces diffraction. So it works really well. Alrighty. So that sort of covers that off. But I think, 30-second exposure is good. I would probably have been tempted to get closer to the jetty and maybe even shot it from on the jetty and had these handrails going up, only because I think that this stuff over here on the left-hand side with the lights and the bush is a little bit distracting, but not a deal breaker. Not a deal breaker. I would probably also just try and lighten up the foreground a tad because it's quite dark. And there's a couple of ways you can do that in Lightroom. If you can lift the shadows up a bit, so you'll see that that'll bring that up just a little bit. The other thing you can do is you can use a gradient filter, drag it up from the bottom like so, and then use the exposure to increase it. So just increase the exposure like that. So you can adjust it to whatever you like, and then you can actually move the filter around as much as you want. Once you've done it, test it, drag it up. If you want to move it so the gradient is right up there where the transition is to the jetty, then we can just squeeze it like that, make the gradient a very narrow gradient, something like that. I would also probably, crop, there's too much foreground in this for me. And in fact, what I'm going to do, Brian, is I'm going to take liberty here, and I'm going to do a bit of cropping. I'm going to get rid of that bush as well. And I'm going to get rid of that city. I'm going to get rid of just a bit of lens distortion going on. I don't know if you've done the lens distortion removal. We've got the same tools in Photoshop to get rid of any distortion. Nope. See the difference it makes just quickly there as I click that? So there's a bit of what they call pincushion distortion. So just tick the box. Let Adobe take care of it for you. And let's just straighten up the horizon. Let's just crop a little bit more off the bottom. Just to give you an idea. And sometimes it's just having a look at what else you can do. And I think the sky is amazing. The sky looks great. So I wouldn't change too much about that. But you can see just sometimes it's about, it is about the crop. It is about the angle you shoot something on. So let me go back to the original crop again. Or close to. Let's make it so I think you wanted the jetty in the center. Once again, this is, like I say, it's always objective. Let's try something like that. There we go. So just moving a bit, I would have moved a bit closer to the jetty. That's my personal preference. I actually think that works a bit better. And it just gets a bit lost. So once again, depending on what your focus is going to be, I would make sure that you really look at that and go, have I made that the focus of my image? And if not, how can I make it the focus of my image? And, that's, to me, that's about just thinking about it before you hit the shutter button. And, one of the best tips I've ever got, I remember, one of my great photographic heroes is a fellow called Ken Duncan. Now, I know for the people in Australia, they probably know who he is. If you're not Australian, just Google Ken Duncan. And he was pretty much the one who put panoramic photography on the map in Australia. Amazing photography. And I remember I got the pleasure of meeting him. In fact, I had a photography podcast and I actually interviewed him. And I remember, I can't remember if it was on the live interview or afterwards, but I remember talking to him about his tip when it came to composition. And he said his tip, he said to me, Ben, there's two tips that I'm going to give you that I think gave me the edge over every other photographer. He said, first of all, he said, I took my time. So we would go to a location, he would be there early, he would look around before he even got the camera set up, and he took his time. And he said he got into a zone, so not even his wife could talk to him. He just got into a zone and took his time to really think about what he was going to shoot, and he had to, because he was shooting, wide format, or not wide format, a panoramic with a 1024 or some, I don't know, these cameras that he was using, they were film. And each shot was, $20-30 to process, including the cost of the film. So, he didn't want to be shooting 30 of these. He wanted to get it right. So he said he took his time. They said the second thing was that he stuck around. He was either there way before any other photographer got there, and he was always the last to leave. So he made sure he stayed there to get the best light. And I just think it's such a good tip. But the take your time tip, and I see photographers, when I set up, I see photographers that, well, I'll be getting one composition, they'll shoot 10 compositions. And I'd rather have one cracking shot than 10 good shots. And that's really what my philosophy always is when I go out and shoot. I don't look for getting too many compositions. Sometimes I do, but rarely. If I'm really seriously going to capture something and say, I'm just going to get that image, I just go there and I go, okay, what is going to be the composition that is going to be the composition of all compositions? If you like, how am I going to get that? So always think about that when you jump in, and just before you start hitting the shutter button, have a good look at it. Alrighty. So I really like this image. I think you've got beautiful colour in the sky, Brian. I love the stars, and they're even, because of the 30 seconds, you're starting to get some trailing happening, which is nice. Everything here looks nice. I love the cloud movement. And obviously, the clouds are blowing over your head. There is a bit of noise in the image. So if I zoom in, you'll see there's a fair bit of noise. So just get good at learning how to remove noise. It's not a difficult thing to do, and you can do it selectively. Because you're a Photoshop user, Brian, you can do it selectively. What I would do if I was in Photoshop, this is how I do it. I duplicate the image. I apply noise reduction to one of them. I then create a layer mask, and I just brush through the areas that I want to remove the noise in. Because some areas you can't notice it, but skies, it's always very noticeable. If we come down here to the jetty, it's harder to see the noise. Water, it's always very noticeable. And, by removing the sharpness in the water, it's not going to matter because the water's blurry anyway. So by, duplicate the image in Photoshop, so just duplicate the layer. Just right click on the layer and say duplicate. Go to the bottom layer, add your noise reduction, whatever your favorite tool is. I use a Topaz product, and I use I think it's called Noise Ninja from memory. Used to be a One product, I think. Anyway, but use your favorite product, remove the noise, and then you can go and just brush through the areas where you want to bring through your noise reduced areas, and you'll just fix those up. Just from a technical aspect, that's just doing that. I think otherwise it's a beaut image. There is a bit of a lens flare or something going on here. See this little green spot? So just once again, be careful, and just if there's something that doesn't make sense, it looks like Ghostbusters has been here, the green slime. So we'll just get rid of that. Easy done. Easy done. There we go. I'd say it's lens flare of some sort. Gone. And then just decide, I probably wouldn't want that really bright light there, so I'd probably remove that. Not as easy as it sounds, because you've also got the reflection in the water, so you might have to leave it if it's difficult to remove. But otherwise, I would do something like that. Now, there's a couple of things I've done here. By cropping it, you can see the leading lines coming in from the bottom corners, leading your eye into the jetty, and then the jetty into the distance. And this overblown in these lights, it's almost impossible to stop that happening on a night shot. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But otherwise, good image, mate. Looks nice. I love the tones in the sky. I really love the tones. This nice pastely looking colour in the sky up into the beautiful deep blues. Hey, good job. Alrighty. Good job. Now, just to remember, if you do have some images you want to see on Pixel Chatter, shoot them through to me, Ben at on3legs.com. Always love seeing your images, and really appreciate you sending them in, because I know sometimes it can be a bit daunting having somebody else critique your work. And I really appreciate it. And once again, it doesn't matter what I do. If the image that you've taken speaks to you and you love it, then that's fine. I'm just giving you the tips of what I would have done, in my opinion, to make it the image that I would have taken. And hopefully you can learn something from those tips. And that's really what it's all about. Alrighty, let's have a look inside the chat box and see what's going on as we wrap up. Hey, it's at this time, by the way, if you want to share your social media handles, please do jump in there. Just put them in the chat box. Let everyone know what they are, and that way we can follow each other. Just a reminder for the VIPs that are in the chat box, we do have a VIP hangout Tuesday night, the 17th of October, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. If you're not a VIP and you want to be a VIP, links are in the descriptions below to the Patreon page, where you can become a patron, and that gives you full access to the closed Facebook group with all the VIPs in it, the VIP hangouts, etc. And then depending on what level you come on to as to what else you get, but you can go and check that out. I really love the fact that we've got this community growing, and the VIPs. It's good. It's good to hang out, and they, the VIP. There's some VIPs in the group here. They can tell you they share a lot of images during the week, and they can ask questions, and we help each other out, which is kind of cool. All right, so just jumping into the chat box, let's have a look. All right, I've missed a bit here, haven't I? Am I getting the D850? No, I spoke about that earlier in the video, Chris, but I'm not going to get the D850 at this stage. I won't say never, because I'm like anybody else. I get gear envy, and I just don't think right now I can justify spending $5,000 on a new camera body when the one I've got is doing a fantastic job. It's very difficult for me to justify. So if the D810 was to break tomorrow, then I would get one. I wouldn't buy another D810, I'd get the D850, only because I'd rather have the latest and the greatest. I am trying to get my hands on a Fujifilm GFX 50S to try out medium format, or a pseudo medium format. So I just haven't got my hands on one yet. I'm waiting for a wide angle lens to come in, and then I will hopefully get one that I can have for a weekend on hire, and I'll do a review and everything. But I want to see what that's like, and I know that's a more expensive body again, but I just want to see. I've never done medium format. I want to experience it. Nikki, I use a combination of 3. Depends on the image. Okay, cool. I think you're all chatting between yourselves there. That's good. Andrew says, cheers, Greg. I've got some Aussie stuff coming up. Isn't it funny, Andrew? You went to Iceland and everybody's saying, where's your Aussie shooting gone? You come back to Australia. I think the people that follow us in Australia follow us because we shoot in Australia. They love it. But I'd love to go to Iceland. I saw your images, mate. I was so jealous. It's on my bucket list. I will get there. A couple of stars down that jetty. Oh, God, here we go. Where did I see that? Anthony said there were a couple of stars down at that jetty that morning. And their names were what? Anthony and Brian. I get it. Excellent. Go pano, Brian. Yeah. We could pano this image and that would look great. Definitely. Andrew says... Kathleen says a reflection on the pathway could crop portrait. Yeah, you could. You could try portrait, absolutely. I'm not a big fan of portrait landscape images, personally, but they can work if you get the right image, definitely. Andrew says, great adjustments, Ben. Removing the distractions really simplifies the image. Yep, thank you, mate. There's a problem of joggers at their place. Yeah, well, the 30-second exposure should stop the joggers showing up, that's for sure. Anthony says, as a child, you'd visit the bookshop just to look at Ken Duncan's coffee table books. Yeah, well, the good thing with the internet now is you can just Google Ken Duncan and you'll see his images. He's amazing. The guy is a amazing photographer, and you can learn so much by looking at his images. And if you look at his images, 95% of the time, really strong foreground, always in sharp focus. So, just check it out from a technical aspect. Have a look at his images technically. Also look at his composition. Lay some grids over, rule of thirds grids and things like that. And just, for photographers, we can get carried away just clicking, thinking that, by clicking, because there's people that say take 10,000 photos and you'll learn. I think sometimes you've got to study what other people do to get better. And you grab yourself a cup of coffee or your favorite beer or wine, sit on the internet for an hour and go through your favorite photographer's images and ask yourself, why does that image speak to you? What is it that works? Look at and ask yourself about see if you can work out technically what they've done. Was it a long exposure? Was it a fast exposure? Is everything sharp? Is it focused throughout the entire image? How have they placed the foreground? Are they shooting from down low or up high? Just look at the technical aspects, because once you learn how to use your camera, the next thing is to really learn how to make an amazing photograph. And I don't say anybody can take a photograph. What I think it is about making it. And I'm not saying I'm there yet. I'm still learning, but that's part of what I do. I like looking at people's images and really breaking it down and go, why does that work so well? And you start to think about things like, okay, technically, what did they do? Compositionally, what did they do? What did they do with the focus? What did they do with the rule of thirds? What did they do with the shutter speed? Start asking yourself these questions and look at them, and you'll find you'll get some insights. And when you go out shoot next, you can then start asking yourself the same questions that you discovered looking at their photos. And I've done a lot of that, and I think that helped me more than anything else, by the way. Chance says, I love the tips. Good stuff. Hey, Chance, good to see you in here. I'm glad you like the tips, by the way. It's good to know. Let's go. It's a bit hard to follow some of this chat because I think you're chatting to each other. Really enjoyed this. Great tips. Thanks, Steve. We need more Oz photographers. Tired of seeing the fairy pools. I'm not sure what the fairy pools are. I did see you refer to that, I think, on one of my videos or Andrew's videos. The fairy pools. Is that the Lake District? Is that what you're talking about? Oh, yes. So Andrew's just put it out there, a collaboration in Iceland. We've got to do it. It's funny, the guy that I'm going to Tasmania with in May, I'm never going to do photo tours myself. It's not my thing, but it's his full-time gig, and the fact that he's invited me to do the Tassie ones and invite people along, I thought was awesome. As a bit of a throwaway comment, I said to him, hey, Michael, why don't we do an Iceland one? And he said, yeah, let's work on that. So there's a chance that that later on next year, the On Three Legs crew could be going to Iceland. But we'll wait and see how serious he is. We'll see how May goes, because he might not want to spend 10 days with me after the 10 days in Tassie. We'll see what happens. I think the Poms are permanently fixing tripods in their popular locations. Saves carrying one. That's a bit unfair, but all right. Yeah, no digital editing back then. All right, going. Well, I know I've gone probably over the hour as I normally do. Thanks once again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope you found it helpful. I love doing these. I learn a heap myself, and I just love seeing the improvements. On that wrap up, I want to show you something quickly. This is where I'm going to wrap the show up. Brian, last week I critiqued one of his images, and I want to show you the image that he ended up with, and that's where I'll wrap the show up. And I want to give kudos to Brian. Brian sent me a few images, and I love the fact that we have this environment that's a safe environment to critique images and give tips, etc. What is the biggest thanks to me is when I see stuff like this. Let me show you. Brian reprocessed his image after what we did last week, and this is what he ended up with. What an amazing! And this is an image that I would proudly print up on a canvas and stick on my wall. I want to say, well done, Brian. Thank you for sending me this in and telling me that you reprocessed it after listening to some of the tips, and this is the image you came up with. I think you should be really proud of it. It's a great image. I love all the aspects of it, technically and the processing. I think you did a great job, and I want to say thank you. So thanks for sending that in, because I do these shows. I don't often get to see the result of having done 18. I mean, we've done 18 hours of Pixel Chatter now. I've critiqued over 100 images now, and to see somebody take a lot of the tips, and you're here every week, and actually use it in their processing. I want to say thanks, mate. I really appreciate you sending that in. On that note, gang, thanks once again for tuning in. Pixel Chatter will be on again next week, same time, same place, same bat channel. Until next week, get out there and take some photos. Cheerio.